So you want to start making stained glass, but you have no idea where to start? In this video, I will break down all the tools and supplies you will need. Welcome to my channel. My name is Sarah. I am a stained glass artist in New Orleans, Louisiana, and I like to teach people how to make stuff. So this is kind of a long list of stuff, so I'm going to break it down into 3 sections. The first is cutting and grinding. The second is foiling and soldering, and the third is cleaning and polishing. A few disclaimers before we get started. Stained glass is not the safest or cheapest hobby/art form to get started in, and a beginner kit will cost you anywhere from $200 to $300 if you're buying everything brand new. If you are looking to save money on your little workshop setup, I do know a lot of people who have found like whole studios on Facebook Marketplace, so you'll just want to keep your eye out. I also want to say that this is not the safest activity to do. You're gonna cut yourself, you're gonna burn yourself, you're going to be exposed to a lot of weird chemicals, including lead. So if you live in a household with small children or pets, you're gonna wanna make sure you set up your work area separate from where they are. Okay, now that we've gotten all the not fun stuff out of the way, let's get into the list of stuff you'll need. The first and most important thing for cutting glass is your safety glasses. Please always wear safety glasses when you're cutting or grinding or soldering or even just moving sheets of glass around. These are the glasses I use. I like them because they have protection on the sides and the tops and the bottoms, so no glass is getting anywhere near my eyeballs. The second thing you'll need, and the most fun thing, is your glass. When you're first getting started, you do not need a lot of glass or really expensive glass. I would suggest starting with something that's cheap and has very little texture because it'll be easier to cut if you are unfamiliar with cutting glass. I also want to say that different glass colors will cost different prices. Unfortunately for me, pink glass is one of the most expensive because it is made with real gold. The next thing you'll need is some kind of glass cutter. There are so many different options. These are the 2 most popular styles. This one is called a pistol grip because you all like that. And this one is called a pencil grip. I prefer the pencil grip glass cutters. If you're just getting started, I would suggest you buy both and try them out. They're pretty inexpensive and you might prefer one more than the other. So the way glass cutters work is they have this little rolling ball on the tip that's not sharp to the touch or anything, and it creates a scratch on the surface of the glass, which is how you end up breaking it into the shapes you want. Once you have scratched your glass with your glass cutter, you will need running pliers. These have a little curved bit at the end that you will put your scratch between them, and it'll put pressure on it to create a break. Next up, you will need your grossing pliers. These also have a curved edge and a flat edge. These are really good for getting any little bits of glass that the running pliers leave behind. You can just grab them and break them off really easily. The biggest expense I found when setting up my glass studio was my glass grinder, which I can't hold right here, but I will insert a picture of the one I started with and then the one I have now. Since grinders can be so expensive, I would start with the cheapest one you can find or a used one. The one I started out with was $80 and lasted me years. So you really don't need one of the big fancy ones when you're just getting started. Here are a few optional things you can get that you definitely don't need when you're first getting started, but I find very helpful. The first is a selection of Sharpies. These are really good for tracing your patterns from paper onto your glass. I usually keep a silver one for really dark glass, a very fine tip one, and then just a regular black one. Cutting oil. Mine is super gross because it's been in my workshop forever, but this is the cutting oil I use. This keeps your little wheel on your glass cutter in working order and also helps your cuts be a little bit smoother. Coated glass handling gloves. These are really good for when you're moving a bunch of sheets of glass around. When I go glass shopping in person, I bring these so I don't cut my hands. The edges of sheets of glass are what I cut myself on the most often. And the very last thing on my cutting and grinding list is a Waffle Grid, which I don't have in front of me because mine is full of glass shards, but I will put up a picture right here of what it looks like. This is really good for when you're cutting glass and you have shards. They fall down into the Waffle Grid and don't get stuck in the side of your hands or your arms. One last thing is you'll want to keep a good stock of Band-Aids on hand because you are going to cut yourself. This is my favorite brand. They're called welly. They're fabric. They last through hand washing and grinding and cutting, and they are the best. And I have little tins of them stationed pretty much everywhere I work throughout my house. Okay, foiling and soldering. For foiling, you're going to need your foil. Once you've cut and ground and washed your pieces of glass for your stained glass piece, you're going to foil the edges. This is how I store my copper foil. It's in this little caddy. Copper foil comes in different backing colors, so you can get copper back copper foil, silver back copper foil, and black back copper foil. The most common width of copper foil use is 7/32, but it does come in a huge variety of thicknesses. If you've seen my other previous videos, I very often use 1/2 inch copper foil for my pressed flower pieces. Along with your copper foil, you're going to need something to burnish it or press it down onto your pieces of glass. This is the one I got when I started doing stained glass years and years ago and has lasted me forever. You will want to have rubbing alcohol. I keep mine in this little presser bottle. I use this to clean the edges of my stained glass before I foil it to make sure the foil really adheres well to the glass. Okay, that's all the stuff you'll need for foiling, so now let's go on to soldering. The most important part of soldering is your soldering iron. I use a Edco FX601. Edco is the brand that most stained glass artists I know use, and they come in a pretty wide variety of prices. The most important part when picking out your soldering iron is making sure that you can control the temperature of it. I would also suggest getting a stand for your soldering iron so you don't have something very hot sitting on your work surface. You will need flux. This is the flux I use. I keep mine in a little crystal vessel, and it has a little brush on it so I can easily brush it onto my pieces as I work. For soldering, you're also going to need a spool of solder. This is 60/40 solder and does contain lead. This is my favorite brand of solder that I have worked with. They do make lead-free solder if you're worried about lead, but it is significantly more expensive and a little bit harder to work with. If you're planning on making stained glass pieces that hang, you'll want to make sure you have some jump rings or some tinned wire so you can make your own jump rings. For your work surface, you're going to want to make sure you have some kind of heat-resistant mat. I'll put up the one I use here and a cheaper version. This is the one that I started with. Make sure your work surface is heat resistant because these soldering irons get really hot and you don't want to burn anything important. Two things for safety for soldering. If you're going to be soldering anywhere that doesn't have good ventilation, you're going to want to make sure you have some kind of fume extractor or wear a respirator if you're worried about it. The flux has pretty toxic fumes that come off when you solder, and you don't want to be breathing that in. I also wear vinyl gloves when I solder because I don't like getting flux on my hands. It's sticky, it's hard to get off, it's gross, it's toxic. I don't want it on my hands. Okay, section 3, cleaning and polishing. Once I have finished soldering my piece, I like to use Quick Clean to clean all the flux off my pieces. You can just use soap and water to clean your pieces when you're done soldering, but I really like using this to ensure all the flux is off of it before I go to clean and polish it. Usually the last step after your piece is soldered and clean is polish. This is the polish I use. For polishing, you're going to want to make sure you have a tea towel or some kind of microfiber towel that you don't mind ruining because the polish will stain it. Here are a few of the optional things in the cleaning and polishing process. Patina. This will change the color of your solder lines. Before you use it, just make sure your solder lines are really clean. I have a tutorial up on how to get the brightest, shiniest copper patina, which is a little difficult when you're first getting started. I always suggest that people get a cheap pack of magic erasers because these things are magical for cleaning solder lines before you patina or polish or finish your stained glass piece. And the very last thing I'm going to mention is some kind of de-leading product to clean your hands and your work area when you are done soldering. I like this de-lead soap. I will use this to wash my hands every time I'm done handling anything with lead, just to keep myself safe. I also have these de-lead wipes that I'll wipe down my phone, my arms, anything that has been in proximity of my soldering, I will use this on just to make sure we don't have any lead contamination anywhere. Honestly, there's an endless list of things you can buy for making stained glass, and I've tried to narrow it down as much as possible for the absolute beginners looking for a list of stuff to get started. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more sandglass videos or just videos from me, feel free to subscribe to my channel. And until next time, goodbye.